Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Frontera Radio. I am your host, Sergio Mora. We have another great guest today with us here in the studio. We have Dr. Tyler King, who is a candidate for City Council, District 6. And Dr. King, he is originally from Memphis, Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, right, Doctor?
Yes, sir. Memphis, Tennessee. That's
And
right.
and you moved to Laredo how long ago?
Yeah, and I think I should probably start with my initial move from. And first of all, Sergio, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of your show.
Thank you.
Thank you for the chance to be on here. I'm originally from Memphis. I guess I should start my story with going in 2012 when I moved to McAllen, Texas for the very first time from Tennessee to brought me to the 956 the first time, and that was with Teach for America. My degree is actually in political science, even though I took all the classes to go to medical school, which I eventually did. I took a little detour and was a Teach for America Corps member, and basically they recruited me to the Rio Grande Valley. And so that's what brought me there. So I was a high school history teacher for 4 years down there, which was a transformational time in my life. Learned a lot about myself and what it means to serve and what it means to fight for the American dream for people who don't always have access to those resources. And it was a life changer. And during that time, another life changer is I met my wife, who's from Alejandra, from Monterrey, una regia, and fell in love with her in South Texas and Mexico. And for the first 2 years of our relationship, we were traveling back and forth, or I was traveling via bus to Monterrey, Mexico for 2 years. Every other weekend, every Friday after I got done with school and teaching, and then just fell in love. And then she allowed me to go to medical school. She joined me after we got married. We went to Arkansas for that, and then we always knew during that time in Arkansas we'd come back to South Texas. It was just a matter of where, and luckily, I was recruited to the family medicine residency program here. I arrived in Laredo in April of 2020, right after the pandemic began, and got my head down and went to work on a pandemic. And then after had some time to look up and breathe and see who my representatives were as someone who studied political science. I want to know who's my representative, what's going on. I read a little of the history of Laredo, read The Patron Democracy, one of the first books I read, and Laredo has a fascinating history, and I, initially was just wanting to get involved in local politics and just and volunteer on a campaign. What happened in February with our 2-week water boil crisis, that was kind of the icing on the cake for me, where I said, you know what, something's going on here, and I wanted to get involved. And one thing led to another, and I ended up getting encouraged to run.
So you decided to make South Texas your home. You arrived in McAllen with a Teach for America. Mm-hmm. You're a history teacher. You're a political science major, mm-hmm. and you are a doctor.
Yes.
And you landed here right during when the pandemic was kicking off, the 2 months into
Yep.
the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so so you've been in Laredo for a couple of years, 2 years, very interesting years.
Yep.
I think that the issues that we are facing were put into very sharp relief during those couple of years because government was obviously very, very prominent, very, very visible during that time. Mm-hmm. So what made you take that step in running for city council?
Mm-hmm. So it started when I started seeing some of our representatives that had various ethical violations, character issues, ethical issues that I just felt like wasn't appropriate, and it just felt like the wrong people were leading our city. Once my wife and I decided, we're going to stay in Laredo, make Laredo our home. We're going to try to do something about it. And then ultimately, once we had our, like I said, I'm from Memphis, where water is plentiful and never had to worry about water once in my life. Mm-hmm. And obviously, those of you who are from Laredo, it's something you've seen over and over again. And obviously, we all know 30% of our water infrastructure is 50 years older or greater. And it's just been clearly the can's been kicked down the road. And when we were in our worst moment back in February, I felt like there was a clear leadership vacuum at City Hall. And, I didn't know where my leaders were other than when I looked up on Facebook and saw them smiling and waving at the Washington Day Parade, and I'm like, nothing against the Washington Day Parade, but it just felt like they didn't have their priorities straight. And a lot of people seem to be in power to serve themselves and not the rest of us. So like I said, my original intention was not necessarily to run for office. It was to volunteer on a campaign, actually on a campaign of someone who, initially said they weren't going to run. And then ultimately that person introduced me to several other people who, encouraged me to run, convinced me to run. And then, and I'd just like to point out that I was the first one to get in the race back in May, with the intention of running against the current incumbent.
Yeah.
And once that incumbent decided not to run for re-election, the other 4 candidates jumped in the race. So that is something I would like to highlight.
That is very important to mention, and you're right. And I mean, as we've talked about here, running against the incumbent is not easy. Not a lot of people get the courage to do it because the incumbent has natural advantages. They're sitting up there. The cameras are on them. They do interviews on TV. They can campaign while doing official duties, ribbon cuttings,
a lot of
you name it,
lines crossed there. Yeah.
And they're liable to get a lot of campaign contributions while they're serving because they're working with
pay to play.
Yeah, they're working with developers. They're so they're usually pretty well funded.
Right.
And I was surprised. I did not know you or of you before I started seeing your campaign materials, and I do remember liking your page right at the get go because I'm like, oh man, somebody's actually gonna run against Marta. That's great. So yeah, you have to be commended on that, and that you had the courage to step up in front before any of the rest of the pack did.
Courage or foolishness, but yeah.
Well, I think it was. I think he was a vulnerable incumbent, definitely. And so I think it was a good move.
Well, maybe I wasn't as smart as I thought I was because he obviously decided not to run for re-election.
But going back to being a vulnerable incumbent.
Yeah.
And then yes, word got around that he wasn't running, and so the rest of the
floodgates
pack,
open.
Yeah, and a lot of the people that ran 4 years ago.
Right. Yeah. 3 of the other 4 candidites
jumped in
this race. Yeah, they ran in the same race 4 years ago.
Yeah, and it's become we were talking before we started. It's become a very lively race in that I think that it has a lot more. It has very good candidates, I must admit, and there's a lot more palpable energy from that District 6 race and for the mayoral race. I think. There is excitement in the mayoral race, but I mean, I think that District 6, there's something about it that is generating a lot of excitement.
District 6 overall is a higher socioeconomic status district. Still got plenty of working class people working paycheck to paycheck as well, but a lot of highly educated people in our district. So it makes sense that we have a pool of candidates that are talented and educated and experienced in a lot of different ways. I think I bring a different perspective, not being from here. There's 8 council members and 1 mayor. That's 9 people. I think it's okay if there's 1 person not from Laredo on that 9. And someone like myself who's lived in another border town like McAllen, who's eating our lunch even on trade, even though we're still number 1, if we take it for granted, they're gonna catch up to us. And they have a spirit of competition in the valley, where if one city is not doing lowering taxes or being business friendly enough, then the other city. If McAllen's not doing it, FAR will do it,
Yeah.
Mission, Edinburgh, San Juan. So they do have that advantage. But I've seen what it looks like to live in a border town that's thriving and, moving forward and not stuck in the past in the old ways. And so I definitely appreciate that. So, I'm hoping people will give me a chance and say, he's not from here, but he's made you. I'm a Laredoan by choice now. You can't choose where you're born; you can choose where you make home, and that's what we've done. So,
Well, I think you touch on something interesting, and I think a big debate has been going on over the years in that yeah, we love our city, and everybody knows each other, and but at the same time we do want to attract newcomers. We want to attract talented people to come and make their home here, and that's one of the problems that I think we have, in that it just what the headlines you read and the problems we have just set a really bad example for people looking to move somewhere and set up their life here. So tell us a little bit about these 2 years in Laredo in terms of laying down roots and I mean, you obviously care about the community if you are exposing yourself to this, and I mean, running for office is a ginormous undertaking.
Well, I got to see Laredoans up close in some of their most vulnerable moments and sit with them in their final moments sometimes during this pandemic. So being a physician already is a very intimate relationship with a person, because they tell you things that they would never tell their friends or even sometimes their family. And then, not to mention during a pandemic when people were dying, pretty intensely during some of our biggest waves. I remember being, in the emergency room in January of 2021. I had just been vaccinated myself, but the general public had not gotten full access yet. And I just remember the ER was full. We were in chaos. We didn't have enough nurses. We didn't have enough respiratory therapists, and it was a very strong time. So you could say that my relationship with Laredo, was expedited through the pandemic because of how intense some of those moments were, and the familiarity that I have with McAllen, another border town that I lived in for almost 5 years. Obviously, Laredo is not part of the Valley. It's got its own unique culture, but it's not like I was coming here straight from Tennessee without speaking the language, without understanding the culture, without spending 8 years going back and forth between the border and Monterrey, Mexico, Monterrey. So, I wasn't coming to Laredo completely clueless, right? So I was able to fall in love with Laredo and its people quicker because I already had a basis point to compare it to in McAllen. And then, obviously with the relationship that I have with my wife and all of her family that all are still in Monterrey.
So how, what would you propose to do as city councilman you obviously have an idea of where the city can go if under the right leadership. What are your proposals to correct some of the issues that glaring problems that you see that's holding this community back?
Well, it starts with November 8th, and we have 5 positions available. We have districts 1, 2, 3, we have district 6, and then we have the mayor. That's a majority right there. Yeah. So this is a chance for Laredo to reset the clock and say, we're going to elect 5 strong, honest, doing the right thing candidates. And finally, we'll be able to have a majority to get things done. We've had, and we do have now, some good council members, but it's just we can't get over that 4.5 person lump to actually
stranglehold.
Yeah, so it's a matter of getting that majority of 5, and I think there across the districts there are good candidates that can help. And I'm not trying to get into cliques and all that. I'm not a fan of the cheeseman, the gossip, and this clique, that clique. I will work with anyone who will do the right thing and get things done. I'm not here to judge people's past. I'm here to try to work together. And getting the toxic. Everyone talks about the toxic culture, but how we got to grab it by the roots. There was a recent employee who spoke at city council. I was at that meeting, and I spoke right after her, and I thought I was going to have a significant statement, and then she spoke right before me, and my jaw was to the floor. I'm like, should I even go? I mean, because she was so powerful, and she was exposing so much of that. Yeah. Of that toxic culture and its entitlement, and it's a lack of customer service. So the city, anyone who works for the city, regardless of their position, needs to have the idea they're there to serve. They're working in a government role. But I think the problem is we have so many people in Laredo who do rely on a government job, and they're all a lot of times well paid, that it kind of just becomes another job. And instead, we need to make sure that anyone who works for the city, regardless of their position, that they're there with a service mindset. And if not, we gotta find people that can fill that role, because ultimately this can't go on any further. And council members also need to remember that since 1978, we've been a city manager council manager system. Yeah. After the fall of the Patron, or even though of course the Patron still lives on, but technically 1978, we've had this city council manager system, and some council members seem to think it's a council system where they control the management and day-to-day operations, and it just need to remember that you're not there to micromanage the manager. That's why we can't get a good city manager, because we can't, prove to qualified applicants that we're ready to play ball and let them actually do their job. So that's that. But as far as platform ideas, water infrastructure is clearly it should be the number one priority. Water should be on every agenda of every meeting for city council, but it's going to cost significant amounts of money. We've currently bonded for about $150 million, I think, of projects. And then of course, 14 of our projects were just rejected by the state a few weeks back for whatever reason, whether it was a missed deadline or filling out the application wrong, or just not raising the urgency enough. But we got to get that money. We got to get that state money. Otherwise, it's going to be on the backs of Laredo and Laredo taxpayers. And we obviously don't want that. And we got to give Laredoans and their children and grandchildren a city that's worth coming home to. Because right now, who wants a lot of kids are and they're right out of college, they want to live in Austin, Dallas, but we got to find ways to bring them home and give them that quality of life they want. Little things like Golondrina are pushing things in the right direction, but we got to have more of stuff like that, and we got to incentivize businesses to do that. And that kind of gets into the next point of being more business friendly. A lot of times you hear the stories of small businesses waiting months and months and months for certificates of occupancy. And those people sometimes just decide not to open businesses after all the hurdles that the city gives them. And the city forgets, because they have that sense of arrogance and entitlement. These people can go open up businesses in San Antonio or McAllen. They don't have to do it here, Yeah. So that's something that we just have to. I'm sorry if I kind of went all over the place there, but
no, that's good. That's good.
That's kind of where I lie on my key. To sum it all up, it's water, clean water and air, honest government, and a better quality of life. And then if you get those things right, everything else kind of falls into place, I think.
I wanted to ask you about one of the hot button issues that is on everybody's mind is this proposal for a binational park.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting project.
Mm-hmm.
It would cost a considerable amount of money, but there's a lot of aspects to it, and it would do a lot of much needed. It would introduce sustainability for the environmental aspects of the river, and it would produce this long green belt kind of area all along both borders, the U.S. and Mexico. But there's a lot of talk. A lot of people are like, there's more pressing concerns. So tying into that, what do you think about that project, and what do you think about just quality of life issues in general?
Right.
Parks, trails, things of that nature.
Yeah. So, everyone's going to have the issue. Oh, we got to focus on our pipes first. But as I've said, and some people have now said after me, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time as a city.
Yeah.
That's just fact. Good cities can do both types of things. Specifically regarding, now I'm going to call it the Binational River Conservation Project.
Okay.
Because I think they made a huge mistake calling it a park, because that is quite, if you actually look at what it is, it's so much more than a park. Now, do I think the city of Laredo taxpayers should have to pay for it all? No. Do we even know if it's for sure going to happen? Not yet. They're still waiting to tell us how much it's going to cost and how much is going to be paid. But if you actually look at the details, even from one of the big things I've heard people say is calling it an issue with border security. But in actuality, a lot of the Border Patrol agents I've spoken to, they actually do believe that it increases your line of sight. Okay, what do they? That's what Border Patrol agents want, is better line of sight. It'll actually make things more safe, actually. But at the same time, we got to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And I could care less about the idea of the park aspect. I care about the river conservation aspect. And there's already been $2 million from federal funding from Congressman Cuellar for that. That's a good start, because we got to get those invasive species out, because that's increasing the evaporation rates of the river. Because currently the river, I hope everyone is aware and remembers, keep it top of mind, the river is our only source of drinking water. And it's currently slated to dry up in 17 years, where it can't feed the current 6 million people along the border that it feeds. So I think we should be doing everything we can because that's cheap drinking water. It's 4 times the cost. Water is 4 times the cost if you get it from anywhere else besides the river. So, that's, people sometimes don't think long-term on these things. Yeah. And that some of these investments, people invest in themselves every day. They invest in their small businesses. They know they're going to have to invest something, and then there's going to be a return on it later. Yeah. People talk about making Laredo a destination city. How do you make Laredo a destination city without actually investing in yourself? Okay. So, I want the project to happen, and I think it would be great. I think it would actually be good for border security. I think it would be good for quality of life. But of course, everyone watching this right now is going to be saying, how much of my taxpayer dollars are going to be going to that? And, my goal would be, as little as humanly possible. And if we need to put it up to a vote for the people to decide, let's fight it out and talk, with the voters, and, try to give the case of for it or against it. And, we can do a referendum to see, if the voters are for it. I worry that, there's a lot of people that are so negative out there that they might be able to win the day, because it's so much easier to say no than yes sometimes. Yeah. But, I understand the concern. I don't want it to be all on us taxpayers, but let's at least try to have an open mind about it, and not just shut it down because the word park was in there originally. It should have never been in there. It should have been what it was, which is a river conservation project. And then other parks, we got to do, I know you asked about some of the other, parks out there, but we can get into that too if you'd like. But obviously I want to have more covered spaces outdoors, because North Central Park's amazing. But it's wide open, and in the dead of summer, nobody wants to be out there in the middle of the day. So we need more outdoor covered spaces. And then lastly, I really, really want to find what it takes to bring District 6 a rec center. There's no rec center in all of District 6, not, besides the country club, but the country club, 900 people out of 32,000 are members of the country club.
It costs in our district a few $1,000s.
It's now $20,000 initiation fee just to join, and then pay a big chunk per month. So very few people can afford that. And congratulations to those of you who can. And all the respect. Maybe one day I'll be able to join, but it's going to be a while, And for now, we're looking to have things for everybody to use. And a rec center is great because it's not just a gym like Gold's Gym. It's a place where the community can come together and host events. I know 85-year-old women who are driving all the way to Fasken, sitting in Mines Road traffic for their Zumba class. I think District 6 pays its fair share in taxes. It'd be nice if we had a community recreational center. I think we more than deserve it. I'm gonna do. They're expensive to build and to run, but I think it's worth it, and I think our taxpayers in District 6 deserve it.
I wanted to ask you about the city manager search. By circumstance, we currently are with an interim city manager. There's a city manager search looming.
Right.
You'll have applicants from all over the country, very qualified applicants. The last two searches, we've had the same thing, and we've gone with local candidates with deep ties to the political establishment.
Of course.
Well, I don't have to go into the results, but they each made off with $600,000 golden parachutes.
The golden parachute,
of
yes,
taxpayer monies.
Yep.
Which I mean, yeah. Well,
they played it right, and City of Laredo played it wrong. So yeah, we can't let history. And actually, that council meeting I was referring to, that's exactly what I was going to speak about. It was right after the previous interim city manager, Mr. Selman, had resigned. I mean, great guy. I thought he was doing fantastic. But
me too.
We can't even retain an interim city manager for a 12-month contract.
Well, I mean, you saw that this guy was doing things ethically by the book, and he caused a firestorm in terms of he messed with
the wrong people,
in their opinion, sacred cows, and we're still feeling the results, and it's just a pathetic circus, man.
It's sad. It's really embarrassing.
Really sad. It's
embarrassing
sad
because Laredo has some of the best, brightest, most beautiful people inside and out. And this is what they get from their government.
Yeah.
Toxic turnover. You can't keep a city manager. We've had like 5 city managers in 5 years, something crazy, over and over with city attorneys. We're interims. Like, we're tired. People are tired of the interims. We want permanent leaders who can stay here and who actually care about Laredo. They don't have to be from Laredo. And I'm not saying, we have to go find someone from Wisconsin to come be our city manager. Like, absolutely not. Someone who understands Laredo, but may not necessarily be from Laredo. But if it ends up being someone from Laredo, that's great. I'm not one of those people that says we must find someone from outside Laredo, because there's plenty of talented, qualified people here in Laredo.
Of course.
Who could. Maybe some of them don't want the job, understandably.
Yeah.
But the idea is that's what this council race is about, getting 4 more council members and a mayor. That the applicants coming up in January, which I do hope. I mean, we're 6 weeks away from the election now, so I'm let's just have this election. Let's get a new council installed. Let's have a search. Let's have a search committee. Like last time, there was a search committee that had its recommendations for Mr. Selman, right?
Yeah.
And then what'd they do? They didn't go with that. That was almost a year-long process of grueling interviews and local stakeholder input, and we didn't go with their decision.
Well, it's a show, man.
Yeah.
Like, they have to show that, like, hey, we're doing the process.
Yeah, look, it's a sham. It's and hopefully, if we elect good people this November, we'll actually be able to do that and it not be a sham and it be for real. So,
and so how do you propose to correct the ship in terms of the employee morale, in terms of like the basic questions that plague the city in terms of nepotism?
Yeah,
people being hired for who they're related to, who their father, mother, who they're married to, who's their cousin, things of that nature, part of the same political cliques, we're rewarding people for contributing to the campaign, for hustling votes for their campaign. Ultimately, all those hires are not the best qualified, and the best qualified people get brushed to the side. Also, I mean, it doesn't stop there. It also goes into the awarding of contracts. There's, for example, at UISD, a company was formed by a board member who voted on the contract.
Right.
A company was formed 3 months before a request for qualifications was posted for a job that could have been done by the employees of the school district. They awarded it to this company that had been set up 3 months before, and now they have billed over $500,000.
Yep.
I could go on.
There's,
and on,
I mean, there's argument that
and
UISD,
on.
well, yeah, there's corruption. Let's just say there's corruption. Not just the city of Laredo that has its corruption issues. And
yeah, well, I mean,
so,
it's a culture.
Yeah,
It's a culture thing.
So we have major issues. So one of my first good friends that I made in Laredo, a dear friend now, and I won't reveal anything about his identity. Because I know he's scared that if it came out who he was, telling me some of the things, nothing confidential, of course, but he's scared to lose his job. He's scared to speak up. He's scared to speak out. Luckily, Miss Ortiz had the bravery and courage to do that because she's already retired from her other job, and she had a little more flexibility. But there's a lot of employees down the chain who are scared, and they're doing a lot of the work and they're not getting credit for it. Yeah. The people that get credit are the ones that get in the directorships because of who they know, a lot of times not knowing what they're doing. And it's like the mid-level employees who actually are doing the real work and have the knowledge of what's going on. And they just kind of feed the information to certain directors, and then they smile with the check, or they smile, with the congressman or a council member, but there are good people working for the city. It's just a lot of times people that get those top jobs, those highest paying jobs, they're not qualified, they're overpaid. And we have to make sure so council shouldn't be getting its hands in the day-to-day of hiring and firing, because that's how we get in this problem. Because you hear about council members making calls to directors about hiring their compadre, right? And changing the qualifications for 24 hours, and then all of a sudden their friend goes from being not qualified to qualified in a 24-hour span, and then they close the slot.
Their qualification.
They change the minimum requirements. 24 hours later, they close the job, and then there's only one applicant. Interesting. We have to go with that one. And it just happens to be my cousin's cousin, or whatever, So, we have to have some safeguards in place for that. And it doesn't involve city council snooping around, but, if we need to hire an auditor or a third party to go in there and, check and see if everyone's qualified. I know there was a council member who did try to do that last time, but I don't think that was fully realized yet. And it's a small issue. It's a mid-sized town with a lot of people who are related to each other. So you can't just have no relationship sometimes. I get that. But we have to make sure the people are at least qualified and that all other applicants were legitimately considered. I've heard too many stories about people who were way more qualified that got passed over for the job by someone who just knew someone. And that's just not acceptable.
When you go to these cities in the valley, and you just see the restaurants and the entertainment centers and the Top Golfs and the P.F. Chang's and the Cracker Barrels and the
I miss Cracker Barrel so much.
Too, man. That's why I
from Tennessee. You threw the Cracker Barrel in for me.
Course.
Yeah,
I
appreciate
did. I mean, and so when you're not from this area. I mean, you didn't grow up here, but if us growing up, we remembered. We used to be the tourist destination.
Right. Yeah. My wife growing up, she, my wife born and raised, and all the way up until she was 24, 25 when we got married. Yeah. She lived in Mexico her whole life, and she remembers going to Laredo. She actually remembers thinking Laredo was the it, and like McAllen was the and then over time, the perception
it just
has
completely,
changed.
It just completely shifted, and it's tragic. And I mean, it's obvious because over there they did things the right way, and And here we let a political clique just keep picking at the body politic.
Recycled politicians.
Recycled politicians. The name of the game was extract. Extract as much
out of the system.
Out of the system for us as we can. And everything else was left by the wayside. How do you correct that? How do we get our Cracker Barrel, man? How do we get those delicious?
I swear, Cracker
pancakes?
Barrel. We got to get Cracker Barrel to Laredo, and we got to get
the tourists.
We got to get Topgolf. We got to get Costco. We got to get all that cool stuff. And we have to find. Obviously we are landlocked to an extent, right? We have the river. We have massive landowners who we do have to work with. So. Yeah. It's easy to say, those families are horrible people, and let's just villainize them. Well, that doesn't really accomplish any goals. That just makes them sit on their land and not sell it, and it just stays there stagnant for another few decades. So, we have to work with the people, with the landowners, with the families. To find ways to, we can't just eminent domain, thousands of acres of land just because we want to, there's a process. So we have to, incentivize. I am, pro-business, and I believe we should be using all the chapters that we can to give abatements when it's deserved, when it's things that maybe wouldn't be happening anyway, and trying to, be more business friendly. A lot of businesses don't want to come here, not because they don't think their business could in theory do well, but because they have to deal with such a obstacle driven city government that's just constantly putting up obstacles, or having city council members who are actively sabotaging their role of coming here, so which has happened. We don't have to get into specifics, but we know that's happened. And we got to have everybody on board with being pro-business. And remember, we're a very populous city. And, even though we do have a horrible poverty rate in the 30 percentage points, there is money here, and there are people with disposable income to, and we also have a great tourist network that we need to maintain for Mexico, so they don't just flock only to McAllen. And the only way to do that is to give people reasons to come. Because, the best type of economic development is when you have outside money, coming in, because otherwise it's just the same money that's being spent within our community, right? So we got to invest in ourselves, and we have to incentivize businesses to come here. We have to, not give them just the whole cake, but we have to find ways to recruit businesses here and work ways to develop the land in a way that's smart for everybody, a way that everyone agrees is good. We've had some pretty bad developments in the past that have caused major traffic issues and other safety concerns, and we have to make sure we're building the city smartly. But there's a lot of opportunity, especially in our district. It's the district of the future. There's so much happening in the north, and there's a lot happening on the horizon. So hopefully we can get you that Cracker Barrel.
Okay, that's going to be if you were to win and if you run for re-election and there's no Cracker Barrel, man, I'm going out personally to campaign against you, man. Okay,
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. You brought up a good point, which is the traffic. Right now, a big hot button issue is the traffic in Mines Road. It's definitely not a new issue. Mm-hmm. But it feels that it's coming to a head in terms
it's getting insane.
It's getting insane because obviously, it's bumper to bumper. People live out there, work out there. In a city of our size, all of a sudden to have an hour and a half, 2 hour commute. And I'm not talking about crossing the whole city, just for a small section. And it's obviously because our biggest industry, our bread and butter, the international trade industry is largely headquartered in that area. And as that industry was growing, industrial parks and density, you also had just residential areas popping up at the same rate all across the area. And there's been attempts to even rezone so that they could add more houses in smaller lots.
smaller homes, smaller lots, and you're just going,
yeah.
how can anyone think that makes sense right now? I'm not saying that should never be
Well,
developed.
the majority of the
it's
council thinks it makes sense.
Yeah, it's, and I feel for the current council member in 7, Vanessa Perez, because she is not only represents that community, but she is of that community, and I genuinely respect her leadership. And there actually is an upcoming town hall on the Mines Road congestion coming up Tuesday, October 4th.
Okay.
So I would highly recommend anyone with concerns to go and make your. And I plan to be there. I'm District 6. Mines Road is in my district, but that's clearly an issue that affects all of Laredo. And there's plenty of people in our. And I notice I say our district, not my district. That's a small nuance. But I think the whole my district culture really leads into this possessive mentality that I would like to try to break. When I talk to a constituent, I don't say my district, or I say our district, and it's our city. Mm-hmm. And so the Mines Road issue is something that we all need to be worried about, even if it's not directly in our district. There's plenty of people in District 6 who work and have family in District 7 and have to deal with the Mines Road stuff. I mean, most people don't wake up every day thinking about which district they're in, by the way, and the lines are drawn.
A lot of people don't know what district they're in.
And you know what? I don't fault people for having more important things to think about. It's our job to educate the change, because there was, some changes in February after redistricting. Our district got smaller, actually. A lot of districts got stuff added to them. We got stuff taken away because there's been so much growth in the last 10 years. But the Mines Road issue, I know there's the Vallecillo connection that's north of the area, but that's in the process of being developed. There's the Hachar Park, that stuff's all, but obviously it's taking, all that has taken way too long. And part of it, TxDOT moves slow as a snail. We're like, Mines Road, I think, is the 7th most congested in the state of Texas, or maybe in the country. But it's something that should be top priority for TxDOT as well. And we have to keep pushing them because some of it is outside, especially of an individual council member's control. But we should all be unified as a force on that. The entire council and mayor should be focused on that, because it's insane. I mean, I'm lucky. I rarely have to make that trip, but when I do, it's brutal, and I can't imagine the people have to do that every single day. Yeah. So it's something that really needs to be up there in all council members' priorities, not just one council member that happens to represent it. So.
And what do you think about there's always been talk about additional bridges being needed. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's talk right now of the Bridge 4-5 going in the south, in between El Cenizo and Rio Bravo, I believe. And that's a big chunk of land. It's not developed at this time. There's no there's no outer loop to the loop to kind of connect. I know that's part of a plan. I'm for all the above on the bridges. I mean, you look at El Paso, you look at the Valley, they have more bridges than we do, yet we're the largest inland port. So why does that make sense? So I support all the above on the bridges. I'm not an expert on bridges and where they should be, but clearly if we want to keep up pace, because even though we have the highest trade import, our percentage per growth is not as high as the Valley and Eagle Pass. I think we're growing at like an 8% rate. And then the Valley and other places are like, we're talking 16, 20% growth. So they are, gradually catching up with us. So we can't take our status for granted. We have to be looking to grow as well, but it has to be smartly and we don't want to end up with another Mines Road situation. So if we do another bridge, we got to make sure that we don't, create a second problem. And there's people on the other side of the coin who want a bridge in between World Trade Bridge and Columbia Bridge, but because it's closer to all the warehouses that are already over there. But if we'd have to make sure that wasn't adding to the Mines Road congestion, and maybe wait until there's that connection higher up to kind of make sure it's not making the problem even worse. So, you know, we need more bridges for sure. I don't think we just need one more bridge. And, you know, I'm looking forward to like hearing the debate on the two sides, but I get the impression that South 405 bridge will happen. I mean, there's a lot of people who want it to happen, and I just want to make sure it happens with, you know, stakeholder discussions with the local areas, you know, because it could increase costs for housing and whatnot in that part of the county, and you know, in an already very impoverished area. So, but it could also develop that area in a way that it adds a boom to the economy. So, it has to be done in a balanced way. But
We're here with Dr. Tyler King, who's a candidate for City Council District 6. We're gonna do a couple of our sponsors, and then we're gonna head into the final section, if that's all right with you. I want to go ahead and recognize our sponsors, our great sponsors. We have a new, as you could see, a new image for our good friend Rene Benavides, attorney at law. He is a personal injury trial lawyer with the drive and passion to fight for what is right, to litigate and to seek justice for all his clients. With over 22 years of courtroom and trial experience, this boutique law firm, specializing in personal injury, is the best choice for someone who has suffered a wrongful death, a trucking accident, a car accident, or a work injury. Rene Benavides is a board certified in personal injury trial law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. And we have a new sponsor, which was our guest last week, and that is Fernando Baldasso. He is also a candidate for City Council District 6. He wants to stop reckless spending so he could fix our water problems immediately. He wants to provide desperately needed tax relief to home and business owners. He pledges to improve safety and mobility on Loop 20. Laredo deserves honest and efficient government. Fernando Baldasso is from Laredo and for Laredo, and he wants to remind you that he gets the job done. We have another candidate for City Council District 6, and that is Vish. Vish is a small business owner who has taken a stand on various issues facing the city. He will prioritize our water needs, keep our taxes in check, take a strong stand against corruption, and will get citizens involved in the decision-making process. Want different results? Make a different choice. That's Vish Vishwanath, candidate for City Council District 6. Our good friend, attorney George Altgeld. He is Laredo's premier criminal defense firm. The Altgeld Law Office relies not only on its years of experience and proven results, but also makes use of cutting-edge forensic scientists and a team of private investigators to defend your freedom. I know George personally, and he has always fought to keep the government honest and to protect the rights of citizens. That's what he did when he was a prosecutor, when he was an elected official, and that's what he will do for you or your loved ones. That's George Altgeld, the Altgeld Law Firm. And last but not least, our good friend Javier Cuate Mendoza Maintenance Group. They do industrial and commercial cleaning. Look them up. They're great. Our good friend Javier Cuate Mendoza, he was also a candidate for District 6 last time around. He didn't jump in this time around. Great guy, great company. He's been around for a long time, Mendoza Maintenance Group. And that about does it for our sponsors. Doctor, I want to ask you a question. I want to, you obviously have a lot of still family and friends in Memphis. What do you tell them when they ask you about Laredo and you're running for city council? How do you describe this town and your race?
Well, I tell them I love Laredo and I love the people, and you know they've come to visit in Laredo. They visited me when I lived in McAllen as well, and you know, of course, you know, people in that part of the country have a very distorted view of the border in Laredo. They think that the you know, my family's been educated by me, you know, but beforehand, you know, they think the border's it's overrun with just violence, and there is violence on the other side of the border, but very little of that violence actually spills over. That's why the border communities are on the Texas side are some of the safest cities in the United States.
Yeah.
That's something that anytime I talk to friends back from home, I explain that, hey, I'm more likely to get shot in Memphis, Tennessee than I am here. We have a very high homicide rate in my hometown that I hope they're able to work on. But I've educated my family about how great and safe and warm. When my grandmother came to visit last year, she was just so impressed with everyone she met. Everyone was so nice to her and kind. Even my grandmother doesn't speak Spanish, and if anyone ever spoke to her in Spanish, she didn't understand. They were just, so warm. I've obviously explained some of the concerns with Laredo, but it's not with the people of Laredo. It's with the city government. And that, I've explained to them the Patron system, the Partido Viejo, the old guard, and how, and some of that is similar to some of the old Memphis politics from, maybe in the 60s, 70s as well. So it's, but it's unfortunate, and it's something but just still, hits here in Laredo. We can feel it more here than in other places, perhaps. But no, it's, they know I love it. They know that my grandmother taught me to get involved, be a part of the change. When I was a teacher, I encouraged my students to get involved and advocate for themselves. And so I'm just doing what I taught them to do.
Tell us a little bit about what went on in your family and in your mind when you said, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna run for city council. And everything that it entails. Okay,
big step. Yeah,
this is what I'm gonna need to doing. The sacrifices. What went on?
Big step. Yeah.
During that time, how long did it take you? Like, how long did you ruminate on it?
Yeah, I mean, right. Like I said, right after February, that was kind of when I started thinking about volunteering on a campaign. I spoke with one of the people who was running and now running this time and has run before, and he said he wasn't going to run again unless no one else ran. And again, this was before the current council member decided not to run. And he introduced me to another one of your sponsors.
So you actively sought out people in politics.
I actively sought out a way to get involved.
Yeah,
and that was intended in a way to volunteer, because I thought, I've only lived here 2.5 years, like. I should just get my feet wet, volunteer. I used to work on campaigns in East Tennessee when I was in college, and volunteered on national campaigns as well, in a state campaign, governor's campaign. So those were campaigns are fun. They can be fun. I mean, especially if you win. And I've volunteered on winning campaigns, and I've volunteered on losing campaigns, and so I kind of knew. Not exactly what it took, but I knew that it'd be a sacrifice, and it has been a huge sacrifice. Let me just tell you, if it was my wife, at first, of course, she said no, right? Like,
right off the bat.
Right off the bat. Yeah. She was like, no, not right now. And, and my response is like, look, I think a door is opening here. And in politics, sometimes the timing is everything. And, there's never a good time to run for office in your family. There's never a good time to have a child. Like, it just happens, right? And you have to act on it, and you have to, if it's in your heart, I think you go for it. A lot of great people don't run for office that should, and so ultimately I had more discussions with her, by no means was she ever over the moon about it, and by no means is she still over the moon about it. This is a lot of sacrifice, and I'm not looking for any pity from anyone out there, but it's been a lot on her, and I consider myself a very active father and husband, and for the expectations for dads are super low, by the way. Like, like I could be like changing our daughter's diaper when she was 2 months old, and my suegra is like, oh my gosh, he's changing diapers, está cambiando pañales, like, I'm like, it's this should be normal. So the bar's low for men and husbands, but I considered myself a very active person in a dad in my, and I still do, but of course, door knocking takes away from bedtime, so it is tough in that sense, but like I've been trying to tell my wife, this is not, I'm not, door knocking every night forever. Campaign season is especially tough, but I've also not misled her and, into thinking that if I'm elected, that it's going to be a cakewalk either. It's a full-time job. You're on call 24/7. And if you allow me, I want to make that extra clear. Even though I'm a physician, I'm going to be joining a physician group that allows me the flexibility to do this job well and be full-time. I know people are concerned that, another physician, that they were too busy, got too much going on. I'm not going to be owning my own practice. I'm not going to have multiple clinics. I'm going to be joining a group who supports me, seeing a reasonable number of patients a day, maybe 20 patients a day. And I'm not going full on, some physicians in Laredo, they see a lot of patients in a day, and you've seen the waiting rooms. I'm not planning to do that. And, I have the support from family and future employer to do the job, well. I just want to make sure everyone knows I will have time for you. I will have time for the job. So
one final question, man. Mm-hmm. We're pretty much out of time. But,
okay.
But you mentioned block walking, and what response are you getting from the people? I mean, you've probably knocked on hundreds of doors already.
Right. Yeah.
What are the most memorable or impactful interactions that you've had with the citizens of District 6?
Yeah, I mean, what I love is that almost everyone I knock on the door, whenever I say I'm from Memphis or not from Laredo, they're like, good, we need new blood, and I'm like, so it's one of those things where I'm not afraid to tell someone I'm not from Laredo because people actually like that. Okay. People are open to an outsider, especially in District 6. So, in the North, where people are more likely to have lived in other cities, seen how other things are done, and be more open, perhaps more open-minded to someone not from here. So, and everyone has roughly the same issues, corruption, taxes, wasteful spending, water. Water's always number one. Even in District 6, where water doesn't necessarily directly affect it, besides water pressure.
It didn't hit as hard.
Right. But still, it's embarrassing to have your city be on the news where half the city is in a water bowl notice for 2 weeks, and without an adequate response. So even if you're in the North, you're embarrassed. It's embarrassing. So, and you have friends and family who live in the South, and from a humane level, you don't want to see anyone suffer. So in the United States of America, we're not a developing country, I mean, look at Jackson, Mississippi right now. They are in deep trouble. They're in a even worse situation than we were in back in February. And, more cities, including ours, are going to have that type of stuff if we don't get serious about infrastructure. There was a big bill passed federally, recently, which, hopefully some of that money can trickle down. But ultimately, the buck stops at the city. We have to balance our budget. We can't print money. We need to work with our state and federal partners. But yeah, ultimately, I'm getting great responses. I just need to knock on and meet. If I can meet every single person in the district, I really think we can win this thing. I think people see that I'm genuine, that I'm doing this for the right reasons. And if I can just meet every person, knock on every door, I think there's no reason why we can't win this thing. So
that is Dr. Tyler King, candidate for City Council District 6. Doctor, thank you very much. We're out of time, but thank you very much for a great, great discussion. And I'd like to invite everybody to like our page if you haven't done so. Share our Facebook page. There's a feature where you can invite your friends to like our page. That would be very helpful to us. We started uploading the episodes on YouTube. I know a lot of people are big YouTube fans, so subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And we have great, great shows lined up. I think on Friday we will have the great Miguel Amante, who is the anchor for Telemundo. He very interesting, very fun character. He's going to be with us, and we're going to have also Maxine Rebeles, who's a candidate, I think, for District 1. She'll be joining us, and I think that's the first candidate we have from that district. And we're going to continue bringing you not only political candidates, but just people who are interesting to hear from in general. So keep tuning in, and we appreciate all the support that we've been getting. Thank you so much. And so that about does it. Dr. King, say goodbye.
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening in. I hope you learned about me. Like our Facebook page, Dr. Tyler King for City Council, District 6, website, drtylerking.com, Instagram as well. I appreciate a chance to get to know me. Send me a message. I'll give you my cell phone number, and we can chat. Give me a call, and I'm here to be accessible and learn more about what you think we need in District 6. And please check out my website with Platform and give me some feedback. I will appreciate any criticism or constructive criticism, and look forward to meeting all of you. And again, early voting October 24th for 2 weeks until November 4th, and then final election day November 8th. And if you're not registered, the last day to register is Tuesday, October 11th. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And that about does it for Frontera Radio. May God bless you, and have a good night.